a veteran in the Desert Storm. And then next to him is my aunt, Cassandra.
We chose the Gulf War. What is the Gulf War? The Gulf War was an armed conflict between the Iraqi government and a U.S.-led coalition. The U.S.-led coalition consisted of troops sent by early NATO allies, as well as Egypt and several other Arab nations. Causes of the war. Iraq invades Kuwait in search of land and oil in August 1990. Iraq took over Kuwait in a matter of days. Saudi Arabia and Egypt called on the United States and other Western powers to intervene because Iraq gained Kuwait, owning 20% of the world's oil reserves.
The political leaders, as you can see by the pictures, George H.W. Bush was the president at the time, so he was a political leader. And then it was Iraq, Saddam Hussein. This is a newer picture, but it was before his assassination. The war leaders were, for Kuwait, was Shakir Jahar al-Aham, and the United Kingdom was Margaret Thatcher, including George W. Bush and Saddam Hussein.
George W. Bush, he was the president of the United States from 1989 to 1993, and he led the U.S. during the Gulf War.
Saddam Hussein was an Iranian politician who rose through the ranks to assume dictatorial presidency. Under his rule, segments of the population enjoyed the benefits of the oil and wealth, but those who resisted him were found dead through execution.
Norman Schwarzkopf, he was a U.S. general during the Gulf War. He served from 1956 to 1991, and he led the coalition troops during the main stages of the war. Here's some pictures of the first invasion of Kuwait. And this is George H.W. Bush declaring war on Iraq.
Just 2 hours ago, Allied air forces began an attack on military targets in Iraq and Kuwait. These attacks continue as I speak. Ground forces are not engaged. This conflict started August 2nd when the dictator of Iraq invaded a small and helpless neighbor. Kuwait, a member of the Arab League, and a member of the United Nations, was crushed. Its people brutalized. 5 months ago,
So this is our timeline. August 2nd, 1990, that's when Iraq first began to invade Kuwait. And then in August 6th, NATO, which was basically the UN, had an emergency meeting about this invasion. August 8th, Iraq gains Kuwait, which means that Kuwait could no longer defend itself, and Iraq took the land. In August 9th, the U.S. began moving troops into Saudi Arabia, but was not declared to fight yet. And then January 16th, that's when George W. Bush declared war, and troops began to deploy out and fight.
This is how the coalition responded. The Security Council demands Iraq withdraw from Iraq, Kuwait, and banded trade. And then Operation Desert Storm began on August 9th, 1990. Hussein responds by expanding his army of 300,000 to Kuwait.
Operation Desert Shield was a strategic move that moved coalition troops and their war machines into Saudi Arabia and the Persian Gulf. The coalition then set up for attack, mainly targeting Kuwait and the capital, and it was led by Norman Schwarzkopf. Desert Storm was a coalition aircraft assault on Kuwait. Main target for the aircraft were the radar targets, oil reserve, and weapon bunkers. Here's some footage of the Desert Storm attack.
August 1990. Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein sends his army into neighboring Kuwait. It its oil fields are rich for the taking. And Hussein may have his eye on Saudi oil too. Saudi Arabia quickly gathers its allies. The 39-nation coalition is the largest since World War II. They vow to bring Hussein to his knees.
Withdraw from Kuwait.
Operation Desert Saber, it happened after Storm. It was during like the last stages of the war, and it was an allied group offensive against the Iraqi forces. And it began in Saudi Arabia and led on to Kuwait City, which is the capital of Kuwait.
The effects of the war through the Gulf War was recognized as a decisive victory for the coalition. Kuwait and Iraq suffered enormous damage, and Saddam Hussein was not forced from power though. After the war, several groups, including the Kurdish and Jaghari Iraqis, attempted to overthrow the government, only to be brutally crushed by the Hussein regime. This is another timeline. January 17, 1991, Desert Storm began its airstrikes. February 24th, Desert Saber is launched, and February 27th, Kuwait is liberated. The war is over. And then in April 1991, Iraqi uprising due to the economical depression caused by the First Gulf War.
The Second Gulf War, it was basically after the First Gulf War, and the UN found that there's chemical weapons in Iraq, so they initiated a coalition of countries, mainly the same countries as the First Gulf War, such as the United States and Great Britain, and they invaded Iraq, claimed the Iraqi government, and they captured Hussein, and yeah, that's pretty much
The statistics of the Gulf War, with over 300,000 troops deployed in Iraq. By the end of the war, 100,000 Iraqi soldiers were killed, and only 383 coalition soldiers were killed, with the United States entering the fight in August 2nd, leaving in February 28th.
The feelings, attitudes, moods, and emotions of the war. The Iraqi soldiers would be angry and pissed about being in another war due to economical depression. The Iraqi soldiers also be demoralized. They invaded Kuwait only to lose it, frustrated and fatigued. Iraqi citizens, they have to be forced into war to take a country to help with their economy. The Iraqi government, they lost so many men from Iran/Iraq war, and they have to lose even more. The American soldiers, hostile to Iraq for instigating a war with an allied country after they helped them fight in the recent war. The American citizens, they have to leave their families again and don't get to see their families. Kuwait, overwhelmed by the casualties of the war. The UN angry that their treaty country was attacked. Pride because they won the war.
The impact now, the Gulf War created the Gulf War syndrome, which is a chronic multi-symptomatic disorder of acute and chronic symptoms. As you can see from this picture, some of the symptoms is fatigue, joint pain, headaches, rashes, skin problems, and insomnia. And the possible causes was psychological stress, nerve gas, biological weapons that were from the Iraq War, from Saddam Hussein, and vaccines that were given to the soldiers, and the toxic fumes from the boring oil wells. This is the pictures of the aftermath of the First Gulf War. This picture on the left, as you can see, is a massive highway. This was known as the Highway of Death, which was a highway that went from Iraq to Kuwait, and it was a major road that delivered supplies, and it was airstriked by the U.S. multiple times.
Here's a quote from Norman Schwarzkopf, the general, and it says, "It doesn't take a hero to order men into battle. It takes a hero to be one of those men who goes into battle." Here's a video that overall sums the Gulf War.
Saddam Hussein called this the mother of all battles. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we'll be learning more about the Persian Gulf War.
Should military action be required, this will not be another Vietnam. This will not be a protracted, drawn-out war.
Relations between the United States and Iraq were strained for years due to Iraq's alliance with the Soviet Union during the Cold War and their stance on other world conflicts. Despite this, the U.S. helped Iraq in the war against Iran during the 1980s. While this battle helped build Iraq into an important power, it also left the country broke. In addition, Iraq's economy suffered because of low oil prices they blamed on overproduction by Kuwait. In July 1990, Saddam Hussein's regime threatened military action should they continue. Saddam also hoped to erase the debt his country owed Kuwait after the Iran-Iraq War. He wished to expand Iraq's presence in the Middle East by controlling Kuwait's huge oil reserves and by annexing the whole country. Due to the region's history, he already considered Kuwait as part of Iraq. The neighboring countries failed to find a compromise, so Iraq launched a surprise invasion of Kuwait on August 2, 1990. Saddam claimed victory within a couple of days. Meanwhile, the United Nations hoped for a quick and diplomatic end to this occupation. Iraq refused a UN request to withdraw, so the country was put under a total trade embargo. At this point, the United States under George H.W. Bush worried that by invading Kuwait, Iraq had gained easier access to neighboring Saudi Arabia and its vast oil reserves. The U.S. hoped to contain Iraqi influence and prevent Saddam's regime from controlling the majority of the world's oil. On August 7th,
Yeah, hold on real quick. Does anybody have any questions about what they presented? We'll get to the veteran in a second, but do you guys have any questions? You can direct them to me too. Audrey? The role of Americans?
They were one of the major fighting forces. They were mostly targeted in Kuwait.
Yeah, and just to kind of lead up, they did a really good job, like information-wise, they did a really good job. Even pronunciations, like not many people can say Norman Schwarzkopf, like that, just the name, but it's NATO, not NATO. Okay, so NATO is NATO, okay, and it's Kuwait. Okay, just so everybody knows that, so if you hear them in the news, but other than that, you killed it. The one thing they did a good job about is that the role of Americans, they did a fantastic job explaining their role during the war, which is crazy because they even did a better job of what they did pre-war, is that we actually were involved in the Iran-Iraq war, and we actually gave weapons to the Iraqis to fight the people of Iran, which is weird because when we go back there in the 90s, okay, so in the 80s we gave weapons to Iraq to fight Iran. And when we went back in the 90s, we fought Iraq up against some of our own weapons, but they just happened to be just a tad bit older. Okay, but we really honestly fought against our own stuff when we went back there in the 90s, and you guys did a really good job of pointing it out. So that would be one that you should put down, is that we actually did something before we got there, and we actually helped decide that we ended up fighting against like 4 or 5 years later. Okay, Cameron, you had a question?
Just some data.
Data? Statistics? Okay, do you guys want to throw one out there or go back to it? You can always go back to it if you want. Okay, and does anybody know what coalition means? Anybody know what coalition means or want to guess what coalition means? Oh, go ahead, Nikki.
Essentially, yes and no. Essentially similar to an alliance, but not generally as permanent.
Yep. Okay, and sometimes they don't go and fight with you, they just give you money and stuff. Okay, so anybody know who our coalition was?
Russia.
No. It was not Russia. It was the British and the French, kind of. And I'll say kind of, and I'll be nice because we're recording. Okay, but kind of. Okay, so, I mean, good questions. Anybody else have a question about something on their chart? Okay, good job setting up videos. That's how you do it right there. They did a really good job of setting up videos. A couple questions I had for you guys before you introduce your guest. did you guys figure out how this war connected to 9/11? Or did you make any connections to 9/11, like after you did the research?
It was played on as the fact that Kuwait was in shatters and they wanted to take over Iraq.
Okay. Who was in control of Iraq at that point of the Gulf War?
Saddam Hussein.
Good. Saddam Hussein. How many of you have heard his name before? Okay, so we actually got some people. All right. Okay, does anybody know his maybe connection with 9/11? Maybe his connection with 9/11. Maybe. I say that loosely.
Was it his control of Al-Qaeda?
Al-Qaeda was able to go into Iraq and be free to do what they wanted to do. Okay, so good job. Yes. Okay. The other question I had, did anybody have any need to knows, by the way? Okay.
Why is it called the Gulf War?
Oh, good question. Why is it called the Gulf War?
I think
Hey, where's your computer? Bring me your computer. I'll pull a map up on the screen so then you can explain it. Okay. Oh God, you about got hit in your face.
Thanks.
Sorry,
Ow.
dude.
Did you get the camera?
Quit being a baby. All right, moving on. What could be the
Sorry, I
best
don't
one
want
to
your
look
thumb
at
in my
here?
eyes.
Let's do this one right here. Hopefully it'll just pull up the map. Last time it like pulled up Wikipedia and all kinds. Oh yes. Okay. All right. You want to explain it a little bit?
yeah. So it's called Gulf War because of the Persian Gulf, and the Persian Gulf, it was like served as the U.S. like kind of their base for their navy. That's where they like launched their aircraft, and yeah, the Kuwait's right here if you don't see it. And
Yep.
yeah, so
Good
it
job.
also kind of borders Iraq as well. So.
Not bad. Not bad at all. Okay, so on a map, if you guys look up here, some of you are staring at your screens. I don't know why. Okay, because ain't nothing in there important right now. Okay. He did a really good job of explaining that. So our Navy was mostly in this region right here, in Persian Gulf. Okay. There's not a lot of entryway, okay, in and out of here. Okay, the Gulf of Oman, you have groups, the people of Oman and Yemen don't really like Americans all that much. Okay, you have the Persian Gulf, you have Iran, Iraq, and you have Saudi Arabia. So tomorrow's guest, okay, spent a lot of time in Iraq and Saudi Arabia. Okay, so you're going to hear quite a bit of that. But a lot of our issue was in the Gulf Wars trying to protect the people of Kuwait, which, if you don't know this, there's a lot of stuff that flows through Kuwait. Oil. Okay, oil is kind of important. Okay, kind of important. And so Iraq tried to take over Kuwait to gain control of
Oil.
the oil. There you go. Pretty simple. Okay, that was a great question. Anybody else have a need to know before we get moving? Okay, all right. Now, Sheldon, would you like to introduce your guest and then okay.
I joined the service in August of 1973.
Go courtesy
during
mode.
the Vietnam War. And I was going to get drafted anyway, so I chose which branch of the service I wanted to go into. I was also at Desert Storm. No, I wasn't there, but my unit was getting ready to go over there. I was in the air defense units. Well, since he flew all of his aircraft out of Iraq to Iran and neighboring countries, he wouldn't send any aircraft up, so they didn't send us up. But we were with the 101st Airborne at Fort Campbell when this all took place. We noticed, like the third day we were in the field, helicopters were flying all kind of equipments out of the field nonstop. A couple days later, we went back on base to get some supplies and noticed there was 50,000 semis being loaded to send stuff over there just from Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Not counting the box cars that they were loading, all the tanks and big stuff that they couldn't fly with the helicopters out of there. It was a pretty eerie feeling to know that that was going on. I was at Fort Campbell a few years, not quite 2 years later, when Desert Shield broke out, which is basically the same thing going on. And pretty much the same thing happened again. They said, you're not going home, you're going overseas. We didn't go because he didn't bring his aircraft back. He didn't want to lose all of his aircraft at that time. So we pretty much, my unit didn't go. I didn't go overseas too much. I went to South America right after we took over Panama. After we took Noriega out of power, we went down to rebuild the schools and the clinics and stuff.
Nice.
Did a lot of different things while I was in. I was in the infantry for a while. I was a recruiter for the state for a couple of years. I ran the mess hall for quite a while. Then I went down to the Cavs, which is a tank unit. I was there for 2 years. Got bored with that. Went back to the infantry for a year. Got bored with that. So I joined the Air Defense Unit, and I finished out my last 10 years in the Air Defense Unit down in Rensselaer, Indiana. So, any questions?
Yeah. You guys have questions? Would love questions. So what did, so when you were in Honduras, you said Honduras and Panama in that area? Is that what you said?
Panama, Colombia.
Yeah. What did you know was the purpose of your mission down there?
Rebuild schools and clinics that got tore up by the U.S. forces going down there, taking him out of power.
Did you agree with what you were doing
Yeah.
at that point? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you guys know the whole story about Manuel Noriega, but he was a big time. He was allowing drugs to go in and out of Panama from South America up into Central America and then eventually to the United States. So we yanked him out of power in what they call a coup. Anybody know what a coup is? C-O-U-P? Nobody know what a coup is?
It's basically
Go ahead.
when your own people take you.
Yeah, it's usually when your own people take you out of power. So if you have a president or a prime minister or a dictator or somebody and they're in power and the people rise up and take them out of office or take them out of power, it's called a coup. Okay, and sometimes coups are successful and sometimes they are not. They weren't as successful with Manuel Noriega, so we had to help with the coup. And when we were helping, like he said, a lot of things that we we didn't have to destroy. That's what happens in war. We made sure that we went back down and fixed it and did those things. Okay, questions? Because I don't want you just sitting here staring at me.
The big reason we were successful in Desert Storm and Desert Shield was he didn't keep his men fed and have plenty of food to drink, and so they just gave up because they were starving. And that was one of the biggest reasons we lost so few people over there.
Now, did you have a ton of friends or people that you were in the military with that did get deployed over there? And
Yeah.
do you know
right
what?
After I retired, they finally sent my unit over there for 9 months.
Really?
I didn't want to retire, but they made me mad one day, and I just walked in and retired. And I wanted to stay for 30 years, but I stayed for 24 and a half instead.
Cool.
Retired then.
So what made you mad?
So.
Are you allowed to say?
Yeah, I mean, my job here in Fort Wayne, I work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. Going down for a reserve weekend at Camp Atterbury, got no sleep for 3 days. I just bought a brand new car, was driving home, ran off the road 3 times, falling asleep. That's enough.
Yeah.
It's not worth it.
So you're kind of saying that they wish the government would take care of you guys a little bit more and looked at how they could keep you a little safer in that.
The government does, I'm not even saying a really good job taking care of the troops. It's gotten better these last 2 years, and the pay has gotten better. Supplies have gotten better. You know, people say Trump's not the one, but Trump's doing everything he said he would do. He's doing everything that the past 3 presidents said that they would do, that they didn't do. So how can we say he's not doing a good job? The economy's doing great. You know, he's done wonders for the military. He's redoing all the VA hospitals to make sure the veterans are well taken care of.
Okay. Did you why did you go into the military in the first place, and then what were you looking forward to do?
My draft number come up 10. So I was going anyway, so I chose to go. And my cousin was a recruiter for the Army National Guard. He goes, well, come on over here. You'll just be in the reserves. And you go to a meeting once a month and spend 2 weeks out of summer training. And that way I could keep the job I had because I really liked it.
And then, what did you want to do in the military if they gave you an option?
I was a diesel mechanic, but they gave my schooling to somebody else, and I got on-the-job training, which is something I already knew.
Mm-hmm.
I was a mechanic before I went in, but I wanted to learn all the fine aspects of diesel engines, and I didn't get that. So, but I learned when I became a recruiter, if I would have made them guarantee me what I wanted in writing, then they would have had to give it to me no matter what. But when you don't get that guarantee, they ask you to pick 3 things that you'd like to do. Number 1 is the first thing you want. Well,
Yep.
I got the 3rd thing that I wanted.
Really?
Yeah.
What were the 2 ahead of it?
They were basically all had to do with mechanics.
Mechanics.
Fuel injections and stuff like that for the diesel engines.
Nice. Anybody else? Question? Okay. You said over here? No?
Here, you stretching?
He's stretching.
Oh, wait, so did you like actually go into like the buildings?
I didn't. I ran a mess hall for them down there for a while. But I got to go out in the field and watch them do it and stuff like that. That was pretty cool. Panama is a very poor country down there. What I made in 2 weeks down there, they don't make in a year. And they live on roughly $300-400 a year. The stuff is really cheap down there too. 'Cause
Yeah.
my son had called down and said he wanted a pair of Nike Air Pumps when they first come out, and they were $150. Well, I could buy it for $10 down there. It's a big.
What?
We just pay for the name here. Down there, they know they don't have the money, so they
Yep.
basically charge them what it costs to build the stuff, you know, shoes and stuff like that.
Yeah, and the importance of Panama is the canal. Like
Right.
that, it wasn't really the people. Like we can act like it was the people and rebuilding the education system and so forth like that, but it was really making sure that we continue to have some kind of control over the canal and what
Well,
was
we
going
didn't
in
really
and
want
out.
control over it anymore,
Hmm.
but Panama wasn't ready to take it over, because we're actually talking building another canal up closer to us.
Yeah, I heard that.
So, and that's still in the process.
Should save money.
Yeah, it's a way for not one country to dominate, because like, it's expensive for a ship to go through that canal. Remember the movie Love Boat called Pacific Princess boat that went, the cruise ship?
Yep.
That's $75,000 just to go through that canal. Well, and they're sending boat after boat after boat through that canal. So you can imagine the country's gotta be making money at that, you know?
Yeah. But are the people seeing it? That's the question. Yeah,
Right.
the regular
don't
people.
see it. It's-
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here. Good job, boys.